Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. This week's video was going to start as one of my typical deep dive videos. I've made a couple of deep dive videos on individual characters as well as organizations within the Life is Strange franchise. In particular, I made a video about the Vortex Club, examining when they were founded, what changes happened within that organization to lead it to where it is in the Life is Strange games. And one thing that I remember thinking is just how detailed and how much information there was available about the Vortex Club throughout the Life is Strange games, whether it was through small flyers, conversations with characters, or direct plot points. This made me want to check out other organizations within the series, and the first one that came to mind was the Abraxas Society from Life is Strange Double Exposure. However, as I began to do my research, I realized that there's all but nothing really related to the Abraxas Society available, any information. However, in terms of details that I could find when I began to do my research, there was really not that much. This led me down a rabbit hole where I really began to see just how poorly implemented this group was into Life is Strange Double Exposure. And this has kind of turned this script into a sort of examination of the missed potential of this organization. So without further ado, let's discuss the Abraxas Society from Life is Strange Double Exposure. Some background on the Abraxas Society is that it was first mentioned in a YouTube video released to promote Life is Strange Double Exposure. The video was titled Welcome to Caledon University. It's a very short video that is sort of a self-aware advertisement for the school, reiterating how nothing bad ever happens here, and it takes you around all the different facilities and things like that at the school, basically all the environments within the game. They directly call the Abraxas Society a secret society, and they point out a couple of spots where you can locate their graffiti. This is their logo. And then the narrator encourages the player to sort of find what lies behind the mysteries and that kind of thing, which really doesn't do much to sugarcoat, exactly the purpose of it within the game, which is really just serving as a red herring. But we'll get into that. Parallels to the Vortex Club are immediate and very, very obvious, and I feel that they're intentional. For one, it's implied that the club started with the original purpose of being a safe haven for outcasts and nerds and artists and things like that, and over the time of its existence, it's evolved into a very elitist organization, basically the same plot line as what happens to the Vortex Club. The Vortex Club started as an anti-bullying organization and slowly turned into an elitist organization that threw parties for very, very rich students. And that's really it. There is, as far as I can find, no information about when it was founded, who it was founded by, who are some members in the past that may have influenced it, are there any stories of things that they've done. There's really not much information at all about this group. But first, let's discuss what the name Abraxas even really means. It's not a word I was familiar with going into writing this script. Abraxas is a Greek term for the Great Akron in Gnostic Christianity. The word can be found in various texts such as the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit and the Apocalypse of Adam. It was carved into certain antique gemstones. These would later go on to be called Abraxas stones, which are used in amulets or charms or other kinds of jewelry. So obviously it's a significant term within Greek culture and specifically Gnostic Christianity, but what does it mean in terms of the symbolism? Because typically with a name like that in a secret society, it would have some callback to, what their true purpose is. One example could be a sort of yin and yang. In certain Gnostic traditions, Abraxas sort of represents a yin and yang, a combination of good and evil, light and dark, two opposites coming together. The reason why I parallel yin and yang specifically is because these opposites are not in conflict, but it's sort of a harmony for the world. It's sort of a balance between these things rather than two competing forces. In a more general sense, you could say that Abraxas represents unity in some aspects. The fact that these two things are coming together to form a more balanced, united thing. Some people have interpreted it as that exact thing. That rather than representing something made up of two halves, it means that these two halves are something new and unique all on its own. Another symbol that is often associated with them, and these could be found on the Abraxas stones as well as those amulets or charms, is what we see on the Abraxas Society's logo, that being a rooster-headed figure. And finally, a bit more of an out there idea, it's kind of seen as the sort of cosmic order of things. And this all comes back to, once again, that idea of balance that we discussed earlier. But it basically means that within the universe, there is balance and there are cycles between destruction and creation and rebirth, and that sort of thing. And while that symbolism is cool, and specifically the idea of duality and the combination of two different things, good and evil, whatever you want to call it, that's clearly meant to play into the story of the game where you're switching between two different timelines, and at the end, they merge together. Similar to how they discuss that two different things can be combined and turn into something entirely new and united, and can sort of transcend that duality, the differences between them. So it's all well and good that they tie it into the game, but with the lack of information about the organization itself and the creation of it, the evolution of it, it kind of feels hollow. Next, we're going to talk about the known members of the Abraxas Society. And while yes, it is a secret society, you would think we'd know more than, what is this? 3 whole members. 3 members. That's all we know. Out of all the students we interact with, only 3 of them. So first we have Vin Lang, who is the leader of the society, and he's also a possible romantic interest for Max. Then we have Diamond Washington. She is a film student at Caledon who attends Max's photography courses. And then finally there is Reggie Kagan. Reggie studies economics, but he's also been attending Max's classes. And that's really the uniting factor between the students that we know that participate within the society. And that's it. That is, in terms of lore stuff, I'm talking things outside of their direct impact on the story, sort of how with my Vortex Club video I discussed specific members, who liked who, how the power dynamic may have shifted when Victoria and Nathan came in. In terms of that kind of stuff, that's really it. Outside of a very direct reference to the fact that the game takes place between 2 timelines that eventually merge, there really isn't much there. So then let's talk about the Abraxas Society's impact on the story then. The first thing that I want to discuss is the cow skull. Now, to refresh, in the timeline where Safi is alive, a cow skull gets thrown through her windshield. This is no ordinary cow skull though. This skull can be seen in the snapping turtle above the stage. By traveling between the 2 different timelines and using a step stool, Max can get up close to it and examine it. As she examines it, she finds a signature that links back to Lucas Colmenero. When she talks to Amanda at the bar, she once again confirms that it was donated by Lucas. And at this point in the story, we had already had a run-in with Lucas. Lucas is sort of meant to be our primary suspect for the first chunk of the game about who could be behind Safi's murder. Then you continue the game, investigate, you can press Lucas, to which you'll learn more about his backstory, his family life, things like that. Ultimately, in Chapter 4, you're able to talk to Vin. You can push him about the cow skull incident, and at first he'll be defensive, but regardless of which dialogue option you select, he will eventually confess and admit that he was the one who stole the cow skull and threw it through Safi's windshield. Which, that's some Fallout 4 dialogue choices right there. So at this point in time, it appears that Vin believes that Gwen canceled Safi's book. And once he finds out about it, he decides that the best way to protect her is to direct her anger at Lucas by vandalizing her car. And he does this because he and Safi used to date, they no longer are dating, and he cares about her, and somehow in his mind, this is the most logical solution to protect the woman that he still loves. What? He believes that because of how hurt Safi's going to be about the book, that to protect her, he needs to vandalize her car and send her on a wild goose chase against Lucas. This is something that I've noticed upon replaying this game, and I've briefly said it before, but I've mostly rescinded what I've said in my review about this game. I don't recommend going back and watching that one because I definitely didn't do my due diligence on it. Since then, with my reviews, I've gotten a lot better and a lot smarter about how I research things. Like, for example, with my Lost Records playthrough, I replayed that twice before putting out that review, as well as my No I'm Not a Human video. I replayed that game 1,000,000 times before I put out the video on it. With Double Exposure, I was so excited to sort of jump on the hype train of the game that I didn't do my due diligence, and I apologize. But I really feel like the reason why I said those things, though, is not that I was lying or trying to hype up the game or anything like that. It's because when you play the game the first time through, you don't see a lot of these mistakes. You kind of take it at face value, and it's only when you go back and see that no matter how you pressure Vin, you will find out he didn't do this. When you sit down and really think about his motivations behind it, or see how thin certain plot lines and mystery lines are, it just really takes away a lot of the positives from the game. I still think the characterization of Max is a strong point of it, don't get me wrong, and I think the performances are good, but this whole murder mystery plotline is definitely, it doesn't hold up when you cycle back through it. So anyway, while this is not directly related to the Abraxas Society, I mean, sure, it's somewhat kind of questioned in Max's mind. Could this have been done by someone in the Abraxas Society? Who could have done this to Safi? And you're obviously led to point a lot of fingers at the self-proclaimed secret society for the strange happenings within the school. And it's still technically tied in because the leader of the society did this. And you would think if he's the leader of this elite society where they're doing all these sort of hazing rituals, or there's rumors of all these things, which, by the way, can't seem to find any rumors about them either when you talk to NPCs or anything like that. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there are these rumors, that there would be, because everyone calls the society mysterious, but then there's nothing really to back it up, to say like, wow, that is strange, that is mysterious. But anyway, because it's him, you would think he would send, some of his underlings in the Abraxas Society to do it, considering he's the leader. So, I don't know. But that's still technically involving a member of it, but he doesn't seem to use the power, you could say, that he would have in the Abraxas Society for this weird attempt at protecting the woman he loves. So what about something more directly involved with the Abraxas Society? After all, the YouTube video that promoted them to begin with highly directs the player to solve their mysteries. So that would lead us to the box. Yes, the biggest mystery with the Abraxas Society is a literal mystery box. J.J. Abrams is like doing backflips right now. You can locate Reggie attempting to solve this mystery box outside in the sort of courtyard area early in the game. When you go over and talk to him, he'll basically let you take a crack at solving it. He tells you that it's a puzzle box directly from the Abraxas Society, and it's a sort of test. It's to test a key virtue of the Abraxas Society, which is a keen eye for detail. There's a couple of different faces, but you need to interact with the faces in a particular order in order to solve this first chunk of the puzzle. That would be the eye, then Thomas Caledon, then the crow. The thing is, for this first mystery with the mystery box, a lot of it can be solved just by listening to the character's dialogue as you mess around and touch things. For example, Max and Reggie will talk about how Thomas Caledon is missing a bird because on the statue in front of the university, he has 2 birds on his shoulders. Then when you locate the bird on the box, Reggie will use his lighter to melt it. Then you get this little medallion of a bird, you go back to Thomas, you interact with him, and then another mystery box is revealed. Reggie then seemingly decides to just give the box that belongs to a secret society to Max. I don't think you'd want to do that if you're a member of a secret organization and you're like, hey, I really need to do this because this is testing a quote-unquote virtue of mine, and I'm just going to hand it over to my professor. Sorry, normally I'm not this like frustrated or worked up when it comes to recording videos like this. I just think having to do this research and just seeing how thin this aspect of the game and how a lot of aspects of this game are, even though I enjoy it on a surface level, it's just so frustrating to me. Then you are able to take a crack at the second layer of the box in episode 2. And just another example of how deep and intricate this mystery is. The only two parts of the box that matter in this portion is the constellation face and the Abraxas logo face, despite the fact that you can interact with, all the other sides. First, you gotta use the pegs to create a sort of constellation, and then from there, another dial pops out. You take that dial, rotate the box back to the Abraxas logo, put that in, and now you can examine the face and sort of mess with the details. And there's 2 dials at this point. You'd think it needs to be a specific combination, but according to research, the only thing you have to do is move to the smaller dial, turn it right 2 times. Boom, puzzle solved. Then another panel will open up. You rotate the box to where it is and remove the lid, and your reward, this secret society, this mystery box that you've solved, which only 2 opportunities to solve it. Usually you'd think it would go in like 3s to like spread it out over the course of the season. But anyway, what you get at the end of all of this is an Abraxas Society pin. Yeah, even the gamer guides that tell you exactly how to solve it comment on how anticlimactic this winds up being. I mean, that's verbatim what one said when I was doing my research. After that, Max will attach the pin to her bag, and then later in Chapter 3, you'll get a text message from an unknown number in the dead world where you solved the puzzle, basically congratulating Max on joining the Abraxas Society and welcoming her. Then the weird thing is, in Chapter 4 in the living world, then when you walk past a couple of kids at the Krampus party, one of them will shout, "One of us," in a different timeline. And that is it. I'm not kidding. The extent of the Abraxas Society is a convoluted and poorly thought out misdirection, red herring, whatever you want to call it, and a pin. And that is all the content remotely related to them within the game, other than finding their logo in a few different spots, like under the bridge during the chase sequence with Safi, and at the abandoned building that you start off the game in, and some other smaller spots. But in terms of like legitimate content, that is the extent of the Abraxas Society. So now my overall thoughts. Look, I want to be the first person to say not everything needs to be like Life is Strange 1 to be good. I have been a big fan of Life is Strange 2 and Life is Strange True Colors, in particular because they are so different. And I've told people that I believe that the Life is Strange series should truly be an anthology that shows characters of different genders, different races, facing different problems throughout the United States. There's not one right way to do Life is Strange, in my opinion. Sure, there's a certain tone, but I think what Life is Strange was meant to be at its core, when you look at the jump between 1 and 2, is sort of vignettes, different anthologies of different people with their struggles and how these unique powers affect them and change their position within the world. So, all that to say, I don't think things need to be exactly like the first one to be good. And so I don't want it to be mistaken that people think I'm complaining about the Abraxas Society because, oh, it's not like the Vortex Club. And while I drew some comparisons, I think there's a clear difference. For example, the Vortex Club isn't responsible for Rachel's murder. In fact, they're almost a red herring. You hear about the stuff with Kate. You hear about the parties and how Rachel was there. And it's so mysterious. And so, of course, you're suspicious of them, but they don't wind up being responsible, but it doesn't ring hollow. Now, why is that? It's because they feel like a legitimate organization that exists within the world. There's posters, there's flyers, you hear people chatting about it as you walk through the halls. You can talk to various people who are members. You can learn the history of it by talking to people or reading flyers. It's all very detailed. The world of that first game is very rich. You can find many small details about individual organizations or groups within that game. Versus the Abraxas Society, which is directly hyped up in an early YouTube video. It's been a part of the merchandise for the game. You can purchase the pin that Max gets from the mystery box, as well as the misdirections like Vin and the cow skull, and being able to quote-unquote join them, the mystery box leading to almost, not really much. All of that, the way they're utilized within the story, combined with the lack of world building and effort put in around them, is why they fail when compared to the Vortex Club. Not because it's just not the Vortex Club. Not because of that, but because of the lack of effort and the lack of world building put into it. I hope I'm making sense here, because I really don't want it to sound like I'm just whining about the game because it's not like Life is Strange 1. I think what it comes down to is the mismatched priorities of the writers of Double Exposure. One problem with the game that I think many people have, and even the people who I disagree with and around the time of this game were kind of at my throat because I said I didn't really care that Chloe didn't show up again in person, or that the story wasn't about Chloe and Max. But one thing that that group and I can truly agree on is that this game either hardcore wants you to remember the first one and how good it was and wants to repeat plot points and beats from that first game, or it will completely throw out all the things from that game and basically kick it to the side and be like, well, we're different. This isn't your grandma's Life is Strange. So for example, with that kind of thing, it would be how there's no reoccurring characters in any way. No matter if Chloe is alive or dead. You would think Max would keep in touch with Warren, or even through the breakup of her and Chloe, that there would be a little more interaction or a little more there than a couple of text messages, which, yeah, that sucks. Even for people who chose Arcadia Bay over that, it still sucks, because all these people, you would think that Max would instead now take the time to know, because she made this choice to sacrifice her best friend for them. That's a frustrating part. So they either kick it to the side, or they do this, where it's so clear that they want you to think, hey, remember the Vortex Club and how mysterious and weird they were? Here's a new one! And then they don't do anything with it. And I think that's why, beyond the light symbolism of yin and yang, two things combining into one, beyond that, there isn't much background or history to the group, because rather than trying to create something organic, a group that functions within the world of the game and functions within the story to add mystery, to add tension, they instead just said, we need a Vortex Club. Cool. Done. It's just frustrating. This whole process has been very frustrating for me, because I enjoyed my first playthrough of this game, clearly, or otherwise I wouldn't have made a video for 40 minutes talking about it. But the truth is, it's about as deep as a puddle when it comes to certain things like this. And it's just frustrating, especially when earlier iterations of the game, and I'm even talking about the other games, such as Life is Strange 2 or True Colors, the organizations and the groups in there are so deep and intricate. I did a whole video about the Drifters from Life is Strange 2, and the backstories that they had, the character moments that they had with each other, the dynamics, the way the group had grown and changed could be seen, and you could learn about that. That's just not here when it comes to the side bits and things like that you get in this game. I mean, the Drifter group is really only in, what, like an episode and a half, I guess you could say? Versus this is a group that spans, at least the mystery box aspect, spans 2 chapters. And then you get another phone call a chapter later, and they're always kind of in the background. They don't need to be the Vortex Club. But they're trying to be, and that's why it fails. Because it's not organic, it's not fleshed out, it's trying to be an echo of the first game than being something that can stand on its own in terms of lore, in terms of impact on the story. You can do a secret society and have it be different than the Vortex Club, and it could be really great. I love this idea of them being specifically artists and people like that, similar to, I don't remember it right now, but I'll put it up on screen. There's like a weird cult meeting thing that like a lot of artists and politicians and stuff go to. Almost like that. And they don't need to be the antagonist. They can just be a unique part of the world to learn about. And there's a good and bad way to do misdirections. Misdirections can be done great, like it was in Life is Strange 1. But here, with just the lack of any foundation, it just falls flat. Because you could do it well. You could have this strange, almost cultish society that takes a step beyond what the Vortex Club was, which was essentially a social club for the elite, and take that step. Now that Max is a professor and a full-blown adult, she can interact and see things that are far different than what she may have seen back in high school. It could be connected to Safi's fate, it could not be. But no matter which way it's used in the story, if it were simply fleshed out more, I think it would be a heck of a lot better and more interesting, even with the current state of it within the story. But that's just me. Sorry to get a little rambly at the end. I just am frustrated with this, and I'm sure many of you are as well. So I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and am I right? Am I wrong? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down below, and I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, you know, whatever.
Lay hands on the bricks and I'd swear from inside I could feel it.
Don't Nod was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.